Okay, what the hell am I listening to? When does this happen in the podcast?
Now. Whatever you are listening to now is happening now.
What happened to then?
We just passed it.
When?
Just now. We're in Thrive Loud now.
Well, go back to then.
We can't.
Why not?
We missed it.
When?
Just now.
When will then be now?
Soon.
It's time to take an inside look at those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have consultant, trainer, executive coach, TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, panelist, professor, author, blogger, and thought leader in the field of leadership and visual thinking. It's a lot of commas in one sentence. He is the CEO and co-founder of an innovative New York City consulting firm called BigBlueGumball. His patented visual leadership approach will not only help you to see and to communicate more clearly, but will enable you to envision a future that you never even dreamed possible. Thrive Loud listeners, Todd Cherches. Todd, how are you today?
I'm great, Lou. Thank you. Nicely done. Nicely compacted my 10-page bio into a few sentences.
A lot of guests on the program have commented, can I take what I did to their bio and use it as their bio? I'm like, you could do whatever you want. It's your bio. You handed it to me. Listeners need to know that we say send the bio, put in your info. And sometimes it's pages long. Today, Todd's was not. Todd was pretty compact. It was pretty easy to mix around. Okay, my friend. So I got a bunch of things to tackle here, and I'm gonna go through this. How did you get this to be your gig? The thing you're doing now. What led you to this focus that you're focused on at Big Blue Gumball?
To sum it up, it's basically I was driven here by the many horrible bosses I've had throughout my career. My book is dedicated first to my wife, secondly to my parents, and thirdly to all the horrible bosses without whom my career would not have been possible. So I started out in advertising and then worked in the TV industry for a number of years. And I had one literally horrible, sadistic, psychotic boss after another. After a number of years in the entertainment industry, I started reading all these management leadership books, and I got hooked on them and obsessed with them. And I finally said, there's a better way to manage and lead people than through tyranny and abuse. So I discovered that, and my personal mission statement is making the world a better place, one leader at a time. And to me, everyone's a leader. So that's the foundation of everything that I do.
So lots of terrible leaders out there. And it's something really interesting. Do you think we're going to get to a point that people who read Visual Leadership, your book, and many other leadership books that are out there will eventually catch on that they're leading poorly?
I hope so. It's like a lot of people, like anything, people move up the level of up the ladder in their role, and then all of a sudden they're given a management leadership role without any training, without any coaching, and it's sink or swim. Right. So just like many athletes, star athletes become managers and coaches and fail because it's just a different skill set. Right. So the issue is that most people aren't taught and don't study the science of management and the art of leadership. They're just thrown in. And then a lot of them are unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. So I hope that through reading books like mine, and I teach leadership in the HR Master's program at NYU and at Columbia. I hope through all this leadership training and coaching that's out there that people start to realize that leadership is something you can learn and be better at. But you need to work at it, right? It doesn't. Some people are naturally better, but all of us need to develop these skills.
Todd, we've had John C. Maxwell on Thrive Loud, and I asked him this very question. What's the biggest problem that you see leaders struggling with today?
Well, right now, my focus of my work is managing and leading in this hybrid post-COVID world. So all the rules have changed. So we're not going backwards to 2019. So people working from home, some in the office. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now is like, how do you manage and lead? How do you build a culture? How do you improve collaboration when people are scattered all over the place. So I think I'm calling it the September Shuffle. My next blog post is called, "Are you ready for the September Shuffle?" Because I think after Labor Day, all kinds of scrambling is going to happen. Companies are going to say, come back to work, and employees are going to say, sorry, I'm not coming, or they're going to jump ship to a competitor. So I think it's going to be a little crazy. So managers and leaders, and we're not talking about titles, we're talking about functions. Anyone in a leadership role needs to look at the world with a new lens. And that's a big part of what visual leadership is all about.
Todd, I want to bring this up a level because there's a part of me that disagrees with something you just said.
Right.
I want to hear where you go with this. You were commenting, obviously, that in the world that we're in today, in this hybrid COVID, we're working in different places, that the roles of what leaders are doing has changed, or it's different. Is it? Why should where somebody physically works or where they're physically be change the way that you lead your company?
It adds complexity. I'll put it that way. It's like herding cats, right? It's like real life story. Years ago, I was the head of the New York office of a Denver-based interactive agency, right? They would very often make decisions or have meetings without me because they would forget that I even existed. Like they would say, "Oh, we forgot. Didn't we just talk about that in the meeting last week?" I'm like, "Well, what meeting?" Right? Because you forget, out of sight, out of mind. So I think that's one of the challenges. It's not that we can't do it, and it's not that the role of management and leadership has changed. It's the focus has changed, and the responsibilities have gotten more complex. So I agree 100%. I think it's healthier. Some people are going to be working from home. But whose choice is it? How much freedom do people have? Who makes those calls? And I think it really, the magic word is it depends. It depends on your industry, your company, your function, right? So there's no one size fits all solution. I just think there's a higher level of complexity now as when we go back to, not back to work, we've been working all along, but when we go back to when we come to the fall, I just think it's gonna be more complicated than ever. You need to lead with empathy and compassion, understanding. You need to be a better listener, but you need to get things done. You need to get your business objectives met and serve your customers. I just think it's gonna be a little more complicated because I think this was like a big shakeup and a big reset. And I think we need to think about things that maybe leaders didn't have to think about before.
Well, what's fun, here's where I'm going with this, because I've managed sales teams in my career, and I remembered for a global organization, and nobody was in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, many people were working remotely, and that didn't change in the way that we led, the way that the goals that were set, the focus of what was there, the overall vision of where we would see the company and where it needed to go. Now, I agree with you. Where you used to be easy, if you worked in a certain industry, you'd just walk outside your door and see how everybody was doing, or the sense of being there. But there is some component that maybe the onus isn't so much on the leadership component of how they need to deal with the complexity of what everyone else is doing. Maybe there's certain onuses that they could be passing off to those that are working remotely on how they can better connect as a whole. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It needs to be empathy, compassion. It needs to be listening. There needs to be looking at things from multiple perspectives. With a sales team, for example, right, you can have a virtual sales force where there's no central office. But let's say, for example, a company says, we want everyone back to work starting September, the day after Labor Day, right? People have been working from home totally fine for the last year and a half. They may say, why do I need to travel 2 hours from Long Island or Connecticut into the city, sit in my cubicle for 7 hours, do my work, and then turn around and come home? I could have done that, save myself 4 hours a day of commuting, and maybe even put 2 of those hours into working, right? So it's like, I think it really depends on what your job is, what your company's culture is like. Do you say everyone's in the office on Wednesdays and Thursdays, but you can work from home the other days? It's kind of like, these are all decisions that need to be made. Because what if someone says, you know what, Wednesday doesn't work for me, I'd rather come into the office on Monday? Then, so who do you accommodate? How do you make these decisions? So I think every decision is just magnified and made more complicated because of, I just think people have a different way we've been doing it a certain way for a year and a half. Are we going backwards? Are we going forwards? Or is there some new world of work that we're all about to enter into?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I guess I look at it as simply as, hey, there's going to be certain times you need to be in, certain times you don't. But understanding the business you're in, there's a company I'm working in where people need to work together in the same venue. The logistics of working virtually has hurt them. think of a lot of shared learning experience, a lot of creative processes, even people putting together great content. The almost touch point parts are really challenging. So my question to you is this: how do you help a leader assess what the right solution is to answer your point, to make your point before? Like, it's going to depend. What are some of the consistent things that a leader should do to help them best understand what's going to work best for their company?
One of the concepts I talk about, and this is actually not in my book, it's a concept I came up with after my book. It's called flipping the eye. The cover of my book has a rainbow colored eye, and the rainbow represents diversity and inclusion, and the fact that no one in the world sees the world through the same lens that you do. So as a leader, you need to flip the eye, turn it around on yourself, look internally at your biases, assumptions, belief systems, prejudices, and then realize that other people see the world differently and turn the eye around. Can you see the world through their lens? Can you look at things from the viewpoint of your employees, from your customers? So I think we kind of have to like slow it down, hit the pause button, look at things differently and say, you know what, was the way we always did things the best way, the ideal way? Are there new and better ways of doing things? So I think that's the best thing a leader can do, is just kind of, again, hit the pause button, which is a metaphor, which is a central focus of visual leadership, and look at things just differently, and seeing new possibilities, new opportunities, new threats. So there's, I think we're in a different world than we were 18 months ago, both good and bad. But I think this is an opportunity to reinvent yourself and do things right or do things better than you maybe had in the past.
If there's something that you want to take and make sure you bring it forward from what the last 16, 17 months have been, something you want to bring with you, and something you want to leave behind as it relates to maybe your world or even some of your clients' work that they deal with. Share with the listeners, what do you think? What do you want to take? What do you want to leave?
Yeah, and there's a lot of things. And one of the things you want to take is the fact that between Zoom and social media, you're more global than ever, right? So maybe expand. Most of my business has always been New York, tri-state area, or between like Boston and Washington. Anywhere the Acela goes was like usually, you know, within my, I'm not a plane person. So anytime I didn't have to fly, but I could get to a customer was great. But just as an example, I've added over 4,000 LinkedIn connections since the pandemic started. I mean, these are, and a lot of these are not just connections, but really good new relationships, right? So I think that's one of the things we could take away, is that we've expanded our world beyond our microcosm of our locality, right? So we're now more global than ever. And with technology, it makes it very easy to talk to someone in Australia as it is to talk to someone, you know, who's also in Manhattan. I think what we need to leave behind is, when we're working from home, a lot of us have no off switch, and we find ourselves working 24 hours a day. There's no boundaries, there's no separation. I think one of the benefits of going to the office was that there was you would leave your home, your commute, your commute was kind of a transition, whether it was 15 minutes on the subway or 2 hours on the train. That was kind of a mental transition. And when you came home, before you put your key in the door, you're able to kind of like, you know, pay your attention to your family or your significant other, or just to yourself. I think when working from home, I think we're living in this 24-hour world, because I often find myself, I'll take a shower at midnight just to recharge and refresh before going to sleep. And I'll get an idea in the shower and I'll work for 4 more hours, right? So I think maybe that's something we should leave behind, is separate out, have a little more, there's no work-life balance, as they say, there's work-life integration. But I think if we can integrate our personal life and our work in a more healthy way, because otherwise it's not sustainable, because I burnt out. I'm sure other people have burnt out as well. So that's what I would say.
I'm joking because I carried forward something I didn't know. When I used to have to commute every single day into the city when I worked on Wall Street, one of the mental exercises I did was the New York Times crossword puzzle, which actually now I have as an app on my phone.
Yeah.
I make sure before I go to work, even though it's only a distance before I'm commuting into my own house and my own home office, that I do the puzzle literally as much as I can within a certain time period, because I got to eventually get going. It gets harder as the week goes on. Keeping that in, that was a way of integrating an old way into a new way to make sure that you still at least have that. The joke is that my wife will send me a text message when I'm working and cranking away at my computer. When are you coming home? Even though we're already here, as a way to end the day at a certain point. But I totally agree with you. We need to end it off at those points, the starting and beginning points. and figure out ways to work that in any sense, whether we're going in or not.
Yeah.
I
I love that crossword puzzle idea. It's like, think what are some of those things, whether it's listening to a podcast or just listening to music. I use music very often just in between meetings, just to recharge and refresh my brain, right? Just get outside. We just got a puppy 6 months ago. Just walk her around the block just to get some air, get the blood flowing. Because it's so easy to just be staring at a screen for 12, 18 hours a day if you're not disciplined. So I think that's an important thing to do.
Let's talk about this. The Big Blue Gumball. What's that about?
Big Blue Gumball is the name of our company. It's myself and my brother. We do management, leadership, consulting, training, and coaching. The Big Blue Gumball represents the world, the earth, the globe. It's like a big blue gumball, right? So however you want, it's a metaphor. We do a lot of work around metaphors and storytelling. It's whatever it means to you, but that's what the company represents. We came up with the name for a .com company back in the .com boom era, but it was towards the tail end. We couldn't get funded, but people loved the name. And they're like, you have to use this for something. So when my brother and I started our company, we said, we're a global leadership company. Big Blue Gumball it is, as opposed to the Cherches brothers. So that's where the name came from. That's what it means. And it represents our approach, which is, fun. And I come out of the entertainment industry. I used to work for Aaron Spelling. And my first job was for Michael out in LA, was for Michael Nesmith of the Monkees. Baby boomers know who he is. Millennials have no clue in terms of name recognition. So I worked for Michael Nesmith of the Monkees. I worked for Aaron Spelling on Dynasty. I worked in comedy at Disney. I worked in drama at CBS. So my background has always been in entertainment and media. So our motto as our company is we make training entertaining. And what we try to do is educate, engage, and excite. It's all about educate. What do you want people to learn and to know? Engage is how are you going to capture and hold their attention. And one way is through our visual thinking methodology. And excite is how are you going to inspire people to go back to work or back out into the world and do things differently. So that's the foundation of what we do and how we do it.
Todd, I'm going to go down an avenue because you brought it up, and I've witnessed it, I've heard it from others, and it's something still so pervasive today. And I find it fascinating because I worked in a place that used to have a bad representation of what leaders were like, that they were awful to work for. Mm-hmm. Why is the entertainment industry just have so many terrible bosses?
Dysfunction is the word that popped into my mind as you were talking. There's two industries I've worked in which tend to have the worst bosses: entertainment, Hollywood, and Wall Street. And I think a lot of it has to do with the core values in both of those industries, and people may attack me, are money, power, control, ego. Creativity and other soft skills are not as valued. And I think that's a big thing. So I've had many bosses, like the Harvey Weinstein is like he's like the poster child for horrible bosses and abusive, but I had a lot of mini Harvey Weinsteins. I had a number of Harriet Weinstein bosses. So it's not just males. But I think that's a big thing. I tell a couple of stories in my book. One is the story about how I was typing a memo one day and my boss, and I won't say which TV network I was working at, but it has a C, a B, and an S in its name. So I'm typing a memo and I hear her door fling open. I feel something whip by my head, and she threw a box of paper pens at my head because they were the wrong ones. She wanted the fine point and these were the medium point. It's not like she was desperately waiting for a pen. She was just annoyed by the fact that they weren't the ones she wanted. So I use that when I teach feedback in my class. I'm like, if you were the boss, is there any other way you might have given your assistant the feedback that they ordered you the wrong pens? And everyone's like, nope, that's all I could think of. That's pretty much it. So, and then one day, actually, I was actually having a kind of a nervous breakdown working for her because she caused so much stress and so much anxiety that I went to her and I said, can we talk about our relationship, how we communicate? And she basically said to me, and I quote, "Stop whining like a little bitch, get back to your desk and get to work. Because if you don't," she said, "when I had your job, I was treated like crap, and now it's your turn." And she said, "if you don't like it, I could replace you tomorrow. So it's your choice." So it's like, how do you negotiate that when you're, I was around 30 years old at the time. My dream was to work for a TV network. I finally got in, and it's like, this is what it was like. And it was like, and it was every day. I actually kept an abuse log, which I still have, and I show it to my students because they just can't believe the daily abuse I was subjected to. But that was just, it was accepted. That was just part of, you want to work in this business, deal with it.
I think and it falls under the category of sports. The time we're recording this right now, there were some unique judgment made by the National Football League against the Washington football team for some of the abusive behavior that the organization has had all the way to the top. And sports and entertainment, same. It really is entertainment at the end of the day. It is interesting though. And I worked on the street, and I could tell you, it definitely got better over the last, the 10-year period. But part of it is also where you worked in it. I think there's just more abusive hours, and you're right, money, power, the key things you're looking for each day. So that just becomes the way that you kind of flaunt it.
Yeah, I think things that were acceptable a number of years ago just aren't anymore, like the casting couch. I mean, my boss, like, kind of a revolving door of young actresses coming in, and everyone knew, and no one said anything. It was just her secretary was basically, yes, I have 2 women booked for you today. It's like, that was just, I was like, how is this okay? Like, how is this part of the culture? But it just was, and hopefully that's changed as well.
Okay. I love asking guests on the program this question, Todd. Want to see where this goes. Look, you're thriving as a consultant, a speaker, in helping people figure out the right visual leadership, for that matter. By the way, visual leadership is so coolly written. It's like, I love the lack of 2 L's. It just flows right together.
Thank you. It's actually a trademark. I actually got the trademark on it now. So the first 2 times the patent office rejected it, the 3rd time, I guess I wore them down because they finally approved it. And the idea behind visual leadership with 1 L is that who you are and how you lead is inseparable from the lens through which you see the world. So,
very nice.
So this word represents the inseparability of your vision, your perspective, your perceptions. And when we talk about leadership, so often we're talking about vision. Like, are you a visionary leader? Where do you see the company or yourself? And so it's the whole idea of seeing, looking, noticing is my central metaphor of everything that I do.
So Todd, with this thriving business and way of thinking and very creative approach as well, we are on most days thriving, and you are on your A game, but we every now and then have an off day, and we're not quite kicking on all cylinders. Todd Cherches, when you're having trouble thriving, who or what practice do you seek to get yourself back on the thriving track?
Well, one of the hottest topics that comes up all the time is the subject of imposter syndrome. Sometimes you say, who am I to be doing this? Sometimes I'll get up in front of my class and say, why should they be listening to me? So one of my practices is remind yourself that one of the best ways to overcome imposter syndrome is realize that you're not an imposter. You're as real as anyone else. So sometimes I'll pick up my book and actually read it and say, whoa, this is a really good book. I wonder who wrote it. It's like, oh, that was me. Or I'll go to my LinkedIn profile and say, just to remind myself of, hey, I've kind of, this is me. This is who I am. And one of the things I always say is that, and it may not come across now, I talk loud and fast because I'm from New York, but I'm an extreme introvert. I always say I'm a 3 Bs kind of guy, a back of the room, behind the scenes bookworm by nature. So everything I do is pushing myself, including talking to you today, is way out of my comfort zone. So I have to kind of remind myself that I have something to say that will help people. I think that's the key thing, is remembering I'm not talking just for myself. I'm sharing with people my 30 years of successes, failures. When I talk about storytelling, it's not just success stories, it's failure stories, it's cautionary tales. Like you're saying, it's like, what do you do on those bad days, those off days? How do you bounce back? How do you, how are you resilient? How do you overcome a bad boss or a layoff or a firing? Because I've gone through it all. And I say a career path, we often talk about career paths. Most of us have career roller coasters with ups and downs, twists and turns, exhilarating highs and terrifying plummets. So I think if we change the metaphor and realize that this roller coaster is just part of the excitement, the ups and downs, then when you're in the down, you just remember the next ride is going to take you back up again. So I think those are some of the ways we need to have that positive self-talk. And I have to do that with myself. But I always have my wife, who's my biggest cheerleader and supporter. And I have my new puppy, who helps give me a sense of perspective. So
what's the puppy's name? I've seen the puppy right now.
Puppy is Lucy. She's a Havanese. She's 11 months old today. And she's just a fluffy bundle of joy. And you can't have a bad day if you just pick her up and hold her for a few minutes.
Very, very true. Let's do the admin part of the show, Todd. Share with the listeners all the places people can find you, Big Blue Gumball, Visual Leadership, where they can get all that. We will put it in the show notes, but it always gets more engagement when they hear it.
Sure. I'll keep it really simple. My new website, my company website is BigBlueGumball.com. That's where the training and stuff happens. But my personal website, which is brand new, is ToddCherches.com. Just my name, CHERCHES. And that's where you can find my TED Talk on the power of visual thinking, information on my book, which was endorsed by Marshall Goldsmith, Dan Pink, and a number of other top authors. And so connect with me on LinkedIn. Just say you saw me on Lou's show. And I live on LinkedIn. So that's the best way to stay in touch and engage with me. So that's what I would say. And my book's available wherever books are sold, including Amazon.
Todd, are you ready to go down Fun Street with me?
I am ready to have some fun. This is like that Seinfeld episode where Kramer says, "Are you ready to have some fun? Or are you just saying you want to have some fun?" And
we are ready to have some fun.
I am ready.
Okay, so my producers have already been prepared for this. And so the real question as you answer this is, can you share with the listeners what's one of your all-time or most rewatchable movies that you love to see over and over again?
Well, The Godfather Parts 1 and 2, my wife and I watch once a year. So there's others too, like The Graduate and Annie Hall. But The Godfather is really, to me, that's, if I had to take just one movie, I would take 1 and 2 with me because I could watch those over and over, and you see things you haven't seen before. And talk about lessons in management and leadership and team building, good and bad. But to me, and I'm a New Yorker, so to me, that immigrant story, I mean, there's just so much, the music, just everything about it. Just it never gets old.
So let's do this. We're going to do the speed round of Fun Street. I'm going to explain how this works to you, Todd. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that lift you up, make you feel good, motivate you, basically make you thrive. And I just want the first thing. Don't sweat too much about it. I think you'll be able to handle it.
Got it.
A song of late that you love to hear or been hearing a lot of, or that pumped you up?
Not of late, but I listen to the Clash and the Sex Pistols and the Ramones from my high school years all the time. So I'm living in the past, man. So I can't say anything new, but when I go out to play basketball, I just need a burst of energy. Those are the 3 bands I listen to.
A favorite food that's not a dessert?
Pizza. Good New York pizza, not bad generic. Yeah.
We understand who we're dealing with here. So a favorite dessert?
Linda's fudge cake from the Cheesecake Factory.
Ooh.
Or Carvel. We just found a Carvel out here in Connecticut because they're very.
That's a complete dichotomy. Okay, so if you're going to Carvel, what are you ordering at Carvel?
Just
what do you
hot fudge sundae, chocolate ice cream. I think that's my number one. That would be, if I had a last dessert, that would be it.
That would be it, and especially if it was on Wednesday, because you
get 2 for 1. Sunday, I used to do that. All my teen years was spent going to Carvel's on Wednesday.
An activity you wish you did more of?
I have a basketball hoop out front, and I need to play more often. So for a while, I was playing every day, and then I stopped. I need to go back to doing that because it's good tension relief. And I'm actually, if the Knicks need me next season, I'm 6'4". I don't know if you know, but if the Knicks need me, if they're listening, give me a call. Even though I'm maybe a little past my prime in terms of my rookie career, but
Todd, they made the playoffs this year. I think they're doing okay.
All right. But you never know. There's always injuries, so I can always hold out hope.
An activity you wish you did less of?
Less of. Probably living my life on Zoom. I need to take some days I'm on Zoom for 8-10 hours because in a global world, sometimes I'm on with Europe or I'm on with Asia. And I realize, like you said before, my wife's like, "Are you ever coming down for dinner?" And it's breakfast the next day. So I need to cut back a little bit on that.
Todd, if I snap my fingers and you could be anywhere in the world, where are you?
With my wife.
Oh, wow. You're not only a nice individual and well-rounded, you're a mensch as well. Look at you.
And I'll be sending her the link to this broadcast.
We'll make sure that she listens. Todd Cherches, Big Blue Gumball, Visual Leadership. Great to have you on Thrive Lab. Thanks so much for coming on.
This was fun. Thank you, Lou.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.